tariffs are a burden on the economy. One reason why tariffs are not used traditionally as sort of this blanket trade negotiating policies because they hurt the implementing country as much as they hurt the target country. So trade doesn't help the U.S. economy. Tariffs don't help the U.S. economy in any respect. But one advantage for Trump of having this very scattershot approach of saying, I want to see more homegrown U.S. manufacturing. I want to raise money. I want to get reciprocity in tariff rates. One advantage of that kind of somewhat inconsistent approach is that regardless of what happens, he could say, I won, I got my goal, because he had everything was his goal.
Frank, President Trump won this election on his pledge to alleviate the cost of living crisis and alleviate the inflation burden on Main Street USA. But if this tariff policy backfires, if it leads to layoffs, if it leads to a recession among the car makers, a recession full stop, then where does that leave his voter base in Michigan, for example, where he won in 2024? And could it be a very different picture, therefore, come the midterms?
Sri, I think you're absolutely right. This is a risky path for him to go down for himself as well as for the target country, because it's going to spur inflation. It's going to put downward pressure on U.S. manufacturing. It might even spill over and cost jobs, depending how deep it is. But the U.S. Fed Lawrence has already signaled he's not excited about rate cuts because of the uncertainty. So Trump has already sort of shot himself in the foot by pushing any rate cuts back 3 or 6 months. So I think we go back to your very first question, is a lot of this threatening and blustering, and is he going to taper some of this down? I think the answer is yes. I don't think we're going to go into a full blanket global 20% or even a full blanket 10% tariff, and he's going to trim a lot of this and have loopholes for a lot of it and then push some of it off, saying he's starting negotiations with one party or another.
Mm. Indeed, and back to your point, that Trump can trumpet that to some degree he's already won, because we've got all of these trading partners scrambling for exemptions left, right and centre, offering deals, offering lower tariffs, offering trade deals, etc. But is there a case, Frank, for instead of each of these countries, negotiating on their own behalf individually, is there a case to push back collectively?
Well, I think that's what some of these other countries will be doing, meaning the signal to the EU, for example, is the U.S. is a less reliable trading partner. So I think EU is going to look at maybe initiatives in Southeast Asia or initiatives with Japan to say it doesn't do us any good to cozy up with the United States because the United States becomes belligerent. So I think we're going to see a ripple effect and a second order effect for some time to come.
Frank, when you talk to US businesses in this region and back home in the States, are they on board? Do they support President Trump's policy when it comes to tariffs?
No, I
because
think there's
the implications are very stark.
I think there's enormous trepidation in the business community. I think the business community in general can say we spent several decades trying to come to terms with increased global trade, with offshore sourcing, and with then in turn reaching global markets, becoming an export superpower as well. So they've really come to terms with this new world we're in, and to have somebody try to turn the clock back and say tariffs, source only domestically, manufacture for the domestic market, give up these foreign markets that you've worked so hard to build out in, is a real setback for U.S. businesses and I'd say for U.S. employment.